We're 5 Mythical Glory players with over 40,000 matches of experience in all worlds, and today we will show you 5 heroes who are underrated AF and help you to easily rank up to Mythical Glory. We have 1 hero for each role, so let's start with the gold lane in our sniper lady, Leslie. But wait, isn't she like the most picked hero right now? How can she be underrated? Well, underrated doesn't mean that nobody picks her. The thing is, many people still completely underestimate her damage potential in the early game, because she can actually deal a huge amount of damage with just 2 items. Yes, I said it. Literally 2 items. Technically 3 if you count the boots, but when she have Berserker's Fury and Endless Battle, it's enough for her to deal 900 to 1000 true damage to an enemy. That is insane, especially in the early game. So you don't need to hide all the time like I did when I played her for the SoloQ to Mythical Glory using every hero only one series. Her skills are also highly underutilized, as it's a common complaint that she's very easy to kill, which is not the case. Think of it this way. Her first skill is a conceal, her second is a get the fuck out of the card, and her ult gives her vision to avoid any kind of ambush.
Hello there.
So don't just spam them mindlessly around and use them wisely. Those 3 skills, if you use them correctly, can really turn you into a menace on the gold lane. Her long range also helps you with this, as she can stay very far away from any danger. And that her true damage is very deadly, especially for tanks, is no news for you, I believe. For her build, I recommend magic shoes for the CD reduction, so you can use your abilities more often, or rapid boots so you can kite the enemies and move around faster. Then go for Berserker's Fury and Endless Battle as her first 2 core items, and then you either go for triple BOD or BOD into Sea Halberd into another BOD if the enemy has a lot of heals. Next up in the XP lane, we have Badang. As we have seen before, Badang can be a very good pick. I mean, just look at Diablo. He fisted Defendi so hard. Diablo displayed extremely well why Badang could be such a great hero. Hell, I always knew it, as he is my second most picked hero of all. His CC is highly underrated, as you can stun lock your enemy while being able to one-shot them at the same time. Now, one of the reasons why he is not the most popular hero is because he is one of the heroes in the XP lane who forces the enemy's XP laner to essentially stay there with him and try to start a Jotaro versus Dio fight and win the matchup. This way of playing as the XP laner is not as popular, as many people like the XP laner to be more effective all around the map. But especially in SoloQ, this way of playing as the XP laner is a very good option, as people don't really know how to counter this hero that well anyways. But even if they counter you as a Badang main, you can still play very good against them and make them question the meta. His set potential, his CC lock, and even the ability to split push is top notch. He is decently mobile as well, and his sustain is pretty good thanks to his second skill shield. The best way to utilize these skills though is when you use them as a counter pick, especially against the enemy's assassins. There are some heroes who can counter him, for example Esmeralda, Uranus, or tanks in general, as you can't beat them up, or Franco with this old motherfucker.
What I do?
But using him as a counter pick against assassins and against a fighter XP laner is a guaranteed W for you. Well, unless your allies are a bunch of headless chickens, of course. So your goal is to beat your counterpart as quickly as possible, and then move on to make the jungler's life a living hell. Badang shines especially in the early to mid game, where he can ambush and wipe the floor with all squishy heroes. Only in the late game, when the enemies hides in the base, it's more tricky. But for that, you have the good old Flicker. The way I like to build him is the same build Diablo used against Evo's Legends. First build Fury Hammer for the early game penetration, which seriously boosts your damage. Then use any defensive boots, but I would recommend tough boots in most situations for the reduced CC duration. Then turn Fury Hammer into Blade of the Heptaseas and move on to DHS, as these will be the items that spike up your damage. Then go for Malefic Roar and Hunter Strike, as this will give you a good amount of penetration. That sounded so wrong. And as last item, you can use Immortality, so you're not dying in the late game. The 4 damage items will max out your damage, so you can do sinister things to all people in ranked games. Next, we have the Little Mermaid. Kadita was also used in the MSC as a roamer or as a mid laner. But as a mid laner, people don't play her as often as other mages such as Farsa, Novaria, Xavier, Eve, and Valentina. The thing is, Kadita is actually a great counter against all of those mages. Yes, she basically counters all meta mages. So you should really use her more often as a mid laner to counter these fackers. Her clearing speed is good, she has a good passive for survivability, an awesome dive skill, a long knockup CC skill, and some huge burst damage, which is why she counters all those mages. She can reach even faster while they are using their ults. Novaria and 𝐉𝐴𝐳 have no instant dodge, and Valentina can't really use Khadita's ult, as you have to get so close to the enemy you'll be putting yourself in a bad spot. She's also very simple to use. Her combos are quite simply first, second and third, and with Petrify it will be first, Petrify, second and third. If there's a teamfight, it's also a lot easier to land your skills, as everyone is focused on so many other things than you swooping in from the side. She's a great mage throughout the whole game, as she will always be useful to back up tank sets or single pickoffs. And if nobody makes a set for her, she can just do it by herself, which makes her easily one of the best mages for solo queue and an awesome counter pick. As build, I usually go for the standard burst mage build, so Clock of Destiny into Lightning Junction, Holy Crystal, Divine Glaive, and the last item can depend on the situation. Winter Junction or Immortality are good options, but if you really want to deal more damage, Blood Wings works as well. Next we have a hero for the position nobody wants to play in solo queue. The Roam role. Now for this role we actually have a hero with a super low pick rate of 0.27%. Our death by Snoo girl, Hilda. Obviously, as we all know, the Roam position is just a horrible role for solo queue. And back then when we had to solo queue Roam, many of us just chose Natalia for her split pushing, invade potential and early game snowball. She indeed is still an option, but it's so easy to counter her now. You can straight up see her when she gets close to you, and Purple Retribution makes her unable to be invisible for a short period of time, which is enough for the enemy's jungler to just kill you. Why am I telling you all that? Well, it's because Hilda has many similar traits to Natalia, just with the advantage of being extremely tanky. This makes her a nightmare for every assassin who goes into the jungle. As Hilda, you can go and invade the enemy on level 1, and if you're close to die, you can easily regen in a bush and just come back later. And if you think her regen is so slow, just go in and out of the bush rapidly. Yes, the healing effect actually triggers every time when you enter a bush. I bet you didn't know that. The best way to do it is by spinning in a circle, and you will proc her passive over and over again, making her regen even faster. Her movement speed is great, so she can roam anywhere on the map. Her zoning is good, as she's very hard to kill, and you can also just kill a squishy enemy if you ever feel like it. Even with a full tank build and 1 damage item, she can deal some crazy damage. As tank, you of course have to adjust your build according to the enemy's lineup. So don't build physical defense if the enemy has 4 mages, and whoever scales first is going to dictate whatever item you're going to build early. If you want to know what items you have to build against which heroes, you should subscribe now, as we will release a video about this topic very soon. As damage item, I would always go for Malefic Roar, as you will face the front laners most of the time, and as roam spell you should use Dire Hit because of the extra damage, but Conceal is also a very good option. Now let's talk about the jungler, and this one is a real wild card. Hanzo. Hanzo is actually an extremely underrated hero, and it's been this way for a very long time. I believe people just didn't understand this hero enough to be able to actually use him to his fullest potential. Hanzo has the fastest farming speed because of his first skill, so he will become level 4 much quicker than any other jungler in the entire game. You can even eat the lethal and the red buff if you time it properly. And he's not only good for farming, he's actually also extremely good at invading, as his movement speed is very good in his old form, and he can become immune to all damage when he's using his second skill. His first skill in old form also deals an extreme amount of burst damage, so you can outrage most junglers just because of that. In ganks he is also great as long as you bait out the enemy's mobility skills before you use your second skill. Plus he can also push towers from a safe distance, which is generally something that is very useful. I mean, you can push in any dangerous bot without actually risking anything. That's crazy. Now I know everybody's going to ask this question. Well, what about his main body? Well, guess what? With this build and a couple of positioning tips, you actually won't even need to worry about it. Use Blue Retreat for the slow and movement speed, Windtalker, Hunter Strike and War Axe, as this will max out your movement speed, which will be very important later, Malefic Roar for penetration, and BOD, which will spike up your damage by a lot. And no, you don't need to go for the Trinity or tank build. Yes, they both work, but to abuse his abilities to the fullest extent, the mentioned build is actually perfect. The reason why this build is so good in solo queue is the amount of distance you can travel in ult form. If you always eat before using your ult, you will add more distance because you can digest the minion you ate, so you can get more blood while you're using your ult. And using your second skill on the creep before it dies is also extremely good and essential, as firstly this gives you more blood while you're in ult form, and secondly also procs your Hunter Strike and War Axe passive, which makes you fast as fuck, boy. Doing everything I just said, I can go from my red buff area all the way into inside of the enemy's base. Also, if I keep using my second skill to keep my War Axe stacks, I'm even able to reach the enemy's base with a little bit blood to spare. Another tip is to use your second skill on a nearby creep or a basic attack to keep up your War Axe stacks, so you can keep up your movement speed. This helps with being safe while you try to steal the Lord, as you can do it from an extremely far distance. Which, by the way, is something you can easily do in the later game stage, as your first skill deals almost 2.5k damage when you have the full build, which is almost like a second retribution. And because of your immunity, it is also very easy to steal the Lord this way. I believe once you have mastered this hero, you can really start ranking up extremely fast, since most players don't know how to deal with the Hanzo that hides in his inhibitor turret or even his base. If you want to learn even more secret strategies, you should watch this video where I show you how you can win every team fight. See you over there!